Hello and welcome back to Seagulls Central. Thank you very much for clicking on this video and coming back to my channel. That is the fastest growing Brighton fan community out there on social media. My name is Adam MacDonald and I'm very, very grateful for you being here today. Today we are going to get we're going to dig into the first four games of the season for Brighton. Obviously 3 Premier League games and a Carabao Cup game in there as well. As the international break is upon us, it feels like quite a nice time to kind of take stock, think about where Albion are going into this season, whether the expectations that we maybe had at the start of the season are going to be realised this season, if there are any strengths, if there are any weaknesses that we've kind of, seen over these first few games and kind of where we feel like we can maybe improve, and just kind of do a general stock take and reflection. As always, if you haven't already, please hit that subscribe button, turn your notifications on. If you find yourself coming back to this channel, you're a Brighton fan, you love watching Brighton content and you haven't subscribed already, please do hit that button. It means so much to me, really helps me continue to grow this channel, and I really, really appreciate your support. Whether you've already done it, whether you haven't done it, whether you're just here for the ride, thank you very much. So let's get into it. How would you really assess the first 3 games of the season? I think, look, if we're going to be real about it in terms of results, obviously it's not been perfect. And actually, I don't think, if we hadn't had that Man City result, almost a week ago now at the Amex on Sunday when we beat them, I think we could have been in this position feeling a lot more worried, feeling like our projection for the season was going to be maybe one of, trying to get into the top half, trying to get out of the bottom half, languishing in kind of, your 12th to 15th underwhelming season position and that kind of attempt for Europe. I kind of feel like if we'd gone into this international break with a devastating draw on the opening day, a defeat at Goodison, then a defeat against Man City without picking up a first win, probably until kind of mid-September. By that point, it would have been unlikely that we would have seen a win until mid-September, maybe even October. It sets the tone for a season badly. The momentum changes, the confidence changes, the whole story, the talk from pundits around the season changes. And I think, to be honest, that Man City game was so crucial in turning that tide and kind of getting that first win of the season, getting a result that reflects kind of how well Brighton had been playing in those first 2 games. I don't think they particularly were, spellbinding. They weren't amazing, but we were pretty decent. We put in some pretty good performances in those first few games, and it was good to really get the results on the board that we did deserve in that Man City game. I think the Man City game, we were obviously brilliant. I think Fulham, we were very solid. We weren't exactly creating bundles and bundles of chances. I didn't think we looked massively dominant. It wasn't the best game until really the kind of second half of that Fulham game, but it was probably a fair result. With that said, I think it showed, that Brighton actually were playing quite well, and that for first game of the season, it wasn't terrible. Everton, obviously you had the atmosphere, you had the shambles that was, kind of the Danny Welbeck missed penalty, the missed chances, but actually any other day, 7, 8, 9 times out of 10 you play that game, Brighton would have won it. They had the chances, they had the dominance, they looked like a very good side against Everton, who in their own right looked like a good side through Jack Grealish. So I think you can put it down to a little bit, of unluckiness in that sense. I think maybe one of the themes, if we're going to start getting into themes around Brighton this season, maybe we can kind of talk about the missed chances. I think there have been quite a few games where Albion have missed a lot of chances, and at this stage, I don't think you can really put it down to anything apart from kind of unluckiness, bad luck. It's not like it's been a trend over, let's say, 6 months of the season where Brighton don't have the quality of strikers or the quality of attackers to kind of, score goals for the Albion. We've clearly got brilliant depth. We've clearly got brilliant options. We've got young players. We've got experienced players. But what's happened in these first few games, I think we've just had a lot of games. We've had a few games, you think particularly to the Everton game, where things just didn't go your way. You hit the bar a couple of times. Things look a bit sloppy. I think also Fabian Hurzeler, if we're going to cut into it really, I think maybe was still looking for his best 11 when it came to his attack in these first 3 games. And I think the Cup game at Oxford really gave him an opportunity to understand his best 11 in terms of attack. Clearly, going forward, it's one where Brian Gruder is a part of it. Matt O'Reilly, for all the conversation we've had around him, clearly Hurzeler has come to the decision that many of us kind of shared around O'Reilly, and where we felt he would be best this season, which is clearly, not as a starting member of the squad. None of us probably foresaw that it would end up with him going out on loan. I think now that we go into this kind of post-international break period, we will probably start with Rutter up front, Gruder in behind, Minteh on the right, Mitoma on the left, Danny Welbeck supporting as and when we need him, and then kind of Seamas pushing for that number 9 spot. Then in the 10 position, we have options of Rutter dropping in. You have various options. Tommy Watson coming back in, Charalampos Kostylas. You have various options going into this kind of next period up until obviously the next international break, which isn't too far away either. So I think that would be one of our takeaways, is that actually I think we were still, and we maybe still are, yet to find our best attacking kind of 5 or 6 when it comes to playing up front. I think the Matt O'Reilly story was an interesting one in terms of it felt like a bit of a learning on the job situation for everyone, where he'd said he wanted to play. Okay, we were going to give him an opportunity. Let's see what he can do. Let's see how actually this is going to develop into someone who either can play in the Premier League for us consistently this season, or someone who, is going to have to, be part of a squad. Clearly, he wasn't even at that level either in terms of being part of a squad. And I think the Marseille loan for him actually probably is a very good loan move for him. I also think another theme of this season so far is actually the impact that the leaders of the group I think have had. A lot of the talk before the start of the season I think was around us speaking about how we might change our lineup, we might change our formation, we might change our centre backs particularly. Does Lewis Dunk have a future starting for Brighton? All of these questions were kind of lingering over the Albion in terms of the formation we were going to play and whether Boscagli, Coppola would come straight into the side. Milner, not seen much of him. Now, let's be honest, I think one of our best players so far this season has been Captain Lewis Dunk, for all the kind of criticism that many of us had levelled at him, around whether he is slightly waning in his quality. I think he's put in 3 very, very strong performances, obviously against Erling Haaland, against Everton, obviously less so for everyone, but I think still a very decent performance where he didn't have to do loads, really. And then against Fulham at the Amex, I thought it was brilliant coming up against Raul Jimenez. Him and Jan-Paul van Hecke, out the two of them, I think Lewis Dunk's looked the better so far this season. And I think actually what we find now is that Brighton are in a brilliant position when it comes to centre halves. We obviously saw Boscagli in the Cup put in a fantastic performance. We saw Coppola put in a brilliant performance in the Carabao Cup as well. Obviously coming on against Man City as well. But is it enough to drop Lewis Dunk? Well, maybe if he'd started the season a little bit iffily and we'd kind of had opportunities through injury to bring someone else in, maybe. But let's be honest, I think he's been one of our top performers. Maxim de Kuyper, another one who we'd felt, is he brilliant defensively? What's he going to be like? Can he replace Pervis Estupiñán? I think he's come in, has probably been one of the players of the first 3 games, has looked very bright. Obviously scored for Belgium the other night as well in a World Cup qualifier. And he's looked really good. He's looked really good in his own right. He looked absolutely, it's funny because often kind of new players, new signings take a while to bed in. We obviously saw it, Gruder. We've seen it with O'Reilly. We might well see it with Coppola, Boscagli, Seamas, Kostylas. Someone like Maxim de Kuyper. God, I forgot I was talking about that. Someone like Maxim de Kuyper is slotted in perfectly, brilliant. He looks brilliant. Man City game particularly, I think we saw the best of him as well. Getting up and down, linking up with Mitoma, having to put a shift in at left back as a defender as well against some brilliant attackers. Yes, Man City weren't at their best, but I think what we found was that actually when we attacked them through players like Maxim de Kuyper, that was when we were able to get at them best. You obviously saw the way that James Milner was speaking to Maxim de Kuyper when he came on the pitch for Man City and was telling him to get at Man City, get the ball in behind it. That's when I think we saw the best of Maxim de Kuyper. So I think it's been, very positive in terms of some of the new signings, in terms of the back line as well. We've looked maybe better than many of us even expected. I think also one of the takeaways from so far this season has got to be around, Hurzeler and the substitutions he's made. Let's think to Man City and the impact particularly that he's had in those games. I think also in other games he has made substitutions which have changed the game. Obviously we saw it in the Cup, particularly in the way that we rotated to be able to kind of see a bit of everyone. But if we talk about the Man City game particularly, that first half, Brighton were okay. They were in the game. They were playing all right. They'd obviously conceded the goal. but they didn't look like they were really giving it much of a go in terms of attack. And I think what Hurzeler was able to recognise was that actually this Man City side were there to be got at in the second half. And whilst, they're obviously a brilliant side, it was a back four of, Matheus Nunes, of Aït-Nouri, of Kusanov, players who aren't established in that Man City defence, aren't natural born Premier League title winners with Man City that we've seen in the past through Walker, Diaz, Stones, Ake. It was maybe a defence that was able to be got at. Hurzeler was able to read that in the game. He went a little bit bold and he was able to change it, bringing on Rutter, bringing on a swathe of attackers, Gruder, Milner, to be able to kind of make a difference in the moment. And it absolutely changed the game. So I think we've got to, we've got to be able to speak about that as well. One of the things I think that we also have learned around the season so far is that of the kind of late in the game vulnerability. Obviously, it was a theme of pre-season. Do you remember against Southampton, we really suffered in that game, the kind of proper game that was played at around 3-4 o'clock with all the first teamers where we'd gone 2-0 up and then we came back and, they came back and it got to 2-2. Obviously against Fulham as well in the first game where, Brighton looked pretty decent. Maybe they didn't necessarily deserve the win, but they were in line to get the win. Very late in the game, they weren't able to see it out. I think Hurzeler, to be fair, we speak about substitutions. I think he maybe made some strange substitutions in the second half of that game. You think about him bringing Milner on. It didn't necessarily feel like the right substitution to be made. But it has become a little bit of a theme. Obviously, we saw it last season. You think about Wolves, you think about Leicester away. Various games where Brighton weren't able to hold on to leads, weren't able to make the most of the advantageous positions they were in. Is that going to be a theme this season? We obviously saw it in the first game. We saw it against Everton in a different way, not so much a late on element, but playing quite well, but still looking a bit kind of vulnerable maybe on the break or late on in games. And I think maybe this could be a theme. I think it's obviously not something that right now has been fixed because obviously we were so unlucky against Fulham with that result. I don't know. I think it just shows still a work in progress. Obviously, we've brought in the new, set piece coach to see what he can do. I don't think our record since we brought in the set piece coach has been brilliant. I think particularly against Man City, there were a few suspect set pieces. I don't think we were able to create brilliant chances out of the set piece. Although what you will say is that we did win the penalty kind of from a set piece with the Lewis Dunk header, didn't we? So I suppose when you put it like that, it's a little bit more. There's a little bit more weight in that, but I don't think we've looked amazing from set pieces. So I think that is one thing we need to learn from. I think, that late game kind of problem that we found last season hasn't seemed to have gone away. I think what we can take into these next kind of string of games before the next international break is the positivity of players like Gruder. Gruder absolutely going into this next swathe of games has to be starting at the number 10 position. I think it's without a doubt now. Certainly with the loan of Matt O'Reilly leaving the club, it absolutely puts us in a bit of a different position where surely the options for the number 10 position are very different now. It might be a Rutter in a 10 and a Welbeck in a 9 or a Seamus in a 9, but Gruder is right in and amongst it now. Whether he'll be playing off the right, whether he'll be playing centrally, he is going to be starting games. He's going to be having significant impact in games over these next few weeks and months. And it's really, really exciting. I think also in terms of players like Belabor, Van Hecker, I would imagine we're going to see maybe a little bit more of an improved performance from them going into this next period. I think Belabor particularly, obviously I've spoken about it before, but he hasn't had his best games. You think about Man City, very sloppy in ball possession. I do think, however, that's maybe been a little bit overstated, the extent to which that's related to the transfer speculation around him, more maybe to do with the lack of fitness in pre-season. He didn't have a massive impact in pre-season in terms of minutes due to injury. But I think what this next period will show is that these players can really come to their own. The distractions are gone. The window has gone. This is the squad. Everyone in the building now will be in the building till January. And we're ready to kind of make a brilliant season. Seamas knocking on the door. Belabor coming back to his best. Great performances from players like Ayari, obviously coming off the bench. Hinshelwood, Gomez getting starts. You think about that midfield. We've got numerous options. The defence is looking strong. So I think we can lock in this next period. And there are some really exciting storylines. absolutely we've got some difficult fixtures. I think Bournemouth away is going to be incredibly difficult. Tottenham at home, after the international break as well, it's going to be really difficult. Chelsea away is involved there as well. Wolves away, we've got some difficult games coming up which aren't going to be easy. I think with Brighton, that you can't really kind of predict when the next brilliant result's going to come from, can you? It's just kind of not the way Brighton roll. It might be against the Tottenham, it might be against the Bournemouth. You just don't know, but you know that they go into every game very competitive with a brilliant squad that can beat anyone on their day. So I'm excited. I think absolutely that Man City game has changed things. I think, just 1 point before the Man City game did show that we were still a work in progress, and that actually we, whilst having some difficult matches, we did kind of need to work out our best 11 in these first few games. And it maybe feels like we've kind of got to that point now. And now's when we're going to be able to kick on and put runs together. And kind of, it's now when we're going to see lots of teams playing in Europe, playing Champions League football, playing European football. Obviously, Palace have already played European football already. It's this next period now where all of those competitions, the group stages, the league stages start properly. And I think maybe that might see an opportunity. We found it when we were in Europe. It's difficult to go Thursday, Sunday. You drop points, don't you? This could be a really good opportunity for Brighton to kick on in this moment and kind of really get themselves up the league with, players coming through, knocking at the door. Rutter, Gruder, Baleba, Seamas, Minteh, Mitoma, De Kuiper, Dunk. Verbruggen, a decent start to the season as well. Gomez on the bench, Hinshelwood, Ayari. There are so many brilliant options there where we can really kick on. So yeah, it's exciting. I think what we've learned mainly from this first 3-4 games of the season is that there's so much more to be seen from this Brighton side. We've definitely not seen the best of them. We've definitely not seen the best of all players. Some of our best players haven't been playing up to form yet. I think some players that we were all calling for, like Gruder, is now ready to start in the first team. We've really narrowed it down. We've really trimmed the fat off the edges of the squad, and we're ready to go in with a focused group with good players knocking on the door in terms of that, wider squad. Also the academy as well. Harry Howe, players like that. We've got some really good options now. It's a tight-knit group. It's much smaller. You remember, it was a very bloated squad, at the start of the window. And we're now ready to really kick on. Let me know what you think. What would you say the key takeaways have been from the first few games of the season? And how were you feeling before that Man City game? So we hadn't won that game. Do you think things would have looked very different now? I think that was certainly my view. And has anything around what your initial season prediction been, let's say in June, July, start of August? Has anything changed from then until now that we've seen 3 Premier League games and a Carabao Cup game? Let me know in the comments. As always, if you've got this far in the video and you haven't already subscribed to the channel, please hit that button below, turn your notifications on, get in the likes, get in the comments, let me know you're here, and come and join the fastest growing Brighton Hove Albion fan community out there on social media. Thank you very, very much for watching. I'll be back ASAP for another video because we're on a roll at the moment with so many videos. Thank you very much for watching, and even though it's the international break, we will be back. Thank you very much for watching. I will see you on the next one, and as always, up the Albion.